So today we're going to talk about how to coach a struggling acquisitions rep in your real estate wholesaling business. But before we jump in today's show, if you have not been over to nextlevelwholesaling.com, head on over there as soon as you can. I've got an amazing gift for you. It's called the Next Level Wholesaling Assessment, and it's going to rate you in the 4 core areas of your wholesaling business. Now, don't worry, it's completely confidential. It's just between you and the assessment. It's actually offline, so you don't have to worry about anyone seeing it. But it's going to rate you in marketing, acquisitions, dispositions, and accounting, right? How much money are you making? And as soon as you take this thing, it's going to take you like 3 or 4 minutes, super easy. It's going to give you a score, and it's going to become abundantly clear on the very next thing that you need to do to get off that treadmill, to have an insanely profitable wholesale business, to work less hours, to have better teamwork, and to really start to enjoy the freedom that a wholesaling business can give you, because that's why you're here, right? You want to make a crap ton of money helping a lot of people working as, well, let's just say not working all the time, okay? So nextlevelwholesaling.com, head on over there, my gift to you. All right, so let's talk about how to coach a struggling acquisitions rep. Now, what is an acquisitions rep? An acquisitions rep is somebody who you can bring into your real estate wholesaling business, and you will feed leads to, and they will go and meet with the sellers and close those deals for you. And I got to tell you, these people are tremendous assets. My first acquisition specialist, his name was Brian, and this was back, I don't know, 2011 or 2012. And once I hired Brian, it just really freed me up to do better things. I don't want to say better things because closing deals is very important, but to do the things that I was really good at, and let Brian consistently close deals. Now, Brian has made me millions of dollars, and I've had multiple acquisition specialists do the same, right? I probably hired, 30, 35 acquisition specialists in my career across multiple markets, and I can tell you it is a phenomenal hire. So what do you do when you hire an acquisitions rep who is at one point doing well, or maybe they've started out and they're not closing like you should, or they're fading, or they're losing motivation, or they're not closing deals, and you're kind of stuck scratching your head? I can tell you that I've dealt with this problem before. I can tell you a story of someone who I worked with. Let's call him Paul. And Paul came into our company, and we trained him up, and he started closing some really big deals. We did everything right? I told him I had him train on the no limit selling system. And by the way, if you have not purchased the no limit selling system, what the heck are you waiting for? It is the best system to train a new acquisition specialist or yourself on how to speak with sellers, how to negotiate huge spreads, how to compress the time it takes to get that contract, and how to talk to buyers to get the most amount of money. Okay, so we trained Paul, let's call him, okay, as I changed his name to protect the innocent, on how to close big fat deals. And I got to tell you, he started out really strong. And about 6 months in, Paul started really struggling, right? He was scratching his head. He was saying the market was too competitive. The deals aren't as easy to get. The sellers wouldn't come down on price, and the leads suck, right? The leads suck, and they're not motivated. And if you've been in this business for any length of time, maybe you've experienced this yourself, right? Your head has taken you to a place where you're like, everything's not working. Or you've trained an acquisition specialist, and I got to tell you, if you've trained somebody, you have dealt with this. Sales is a mental game, right? It's the most entrepreneurial thing that you can do besides owning your own company outright. And so I got to tell you, this is a real topic. So I can tell you that I'm talking to Paul, and I'm like, okay, so we had a heart-to-heart, and I was like, okay, well, what's going on? And he's like, oh, man, I'm working so hard, and I'm calling these leads, and nobody's motivated. And so I kind of took him through a process. And so one of those things, I'll go back to that, is he's like, I've been working so hard for the past 2 weeks. So my first question to Paul was, listen, I know that you are struggling, but what you did in the last 2 weeks has no bearing on the deals that are closing today. It's what you did 90 days ago. Okay, that momentum, the big mo I've talked about from Darren Hardy from the compound effect. What you did 90 days ago that is basically bringing about the results that you are getting today. So I said, what was going on 90 days ago? So I was working with Paul for about 6 months. And after some big closings, it's funny because Paul, I know this is hard to believe, but had a $50,000 month working with me. Okay, he had a $50,000 month working for me. And so what did Paul do? He was working for 4 months. He went and took a 10-day vacation. This was 90 days prior to him struggling. And he had a ton of momentum. He was closing deals. He was on top of the world. He had a 50K month, and he celebrated just a little bit too early because you know and I know that those 10 days weren't the only 10 days he took off, right? He prepped for at least 2 days beforehand mentally, and it took him 2 days to recover. So that's like 2 weeks off. And so I had to remind him of that. And it's really, really hard to get people to understand that. But once you have that dig in, man, oh man, you can start to see that if anyone has any really, really good months, you could point that out and say, hey, what did you do 90 days before that? You were coming in, you were making your calls, you were getting commitments, you were role playing, you're doing all these things. And so I'd remind him of that. So with Paul, we worked, and it was at least, I can tell you this, at least 90 days for him to get back on track from that moment. And he did get back on track, and he went on to make a lot of money. And I constantly reminded him of that 90-day cycle. So that's the first lesson, right? What you do 90 days ago is going to give you your results right now. The seeds that you plant take 90 days to spring up. So you need to coach your representatives, or you, if you are the closer, on this fact. Next, number 2, I'm going to give you 5 things today, by the way. So number 2 is your sales meeting. You need to have a sales meeting every Tuesday, Thursday, okay? And preferably, well, let me say this. You need a sales meeting 2 to 3 times a week, 2 at a very, very minimum. So on Wednesdays, our team, what we do is we go over our top 3 leads, right? We have our top 3 leads. We say what's going on with the story, and then we say, okay, this was my next step. I've committed to do this, and I got the seller to commit to do this. So there's no 3 leads that you have, your 3 hottest. You know the very next step that you need to take that deal forward. I find that even the best reps, they need coaching, and they get leads and they just get stuck in this like whirlwind of information, and they'll have a deal that's pretty much ready to go, but they just have to take one more step, but they just don't do it. Okay, so you got to be able to define that for your leads. Then that's your top 3. The next thing that I'll talk about is sales reps often think they are better than they are. They're like, oh yeah, I'm doing everything in the no limit selling system. I'm good. I understand it. Well, that's when you know they're in trouble. So every Friday, what do? We pull a call, and we take that call and we listen to the call in front of everybody, and then we coach that call. So the first thing that we like to do to keep it fun and interesting is we have the acquisitions rep coach themselves. And then we have everyone else just give one point. Of course, we like to start off with everything that you did well, but what are the things that you could have done differently? So a tip out there to all those coaches, we don't tear apart the entire call, right? We just point out 1 or 2 things that we'd really like to work on, okay? Number 4 is we go over all warm leads. So if someone's really struggling and they don't have a top 3, what we do is we pull up the CRM and we look all the leads and say, okay, which ones want to sell and have some kind of problem? We mark those warm. Now, in your world, you probably should have 20 to 30 warm leads at all times. If you don't, you need to market more, okay? And by the way, one of my favorite places to get leads, okay, is fastsellerleads.com, fastsellerleads.com. You go and you can actually pay per lead. You choose your market, you pay how much you want to pay, or you say how much you want to pay, and they will send you hot leads. Well, let me say this. I'm sorry. They will send you leads every single day, and a portion of those are going to be hot, right? I find in this market about, and again, don't quote me on this, between 1 out of every 8 on the very, very good side to 1 out of every 30 on the less quality side. So that's what that is doing right now. So you can check that out at fastsellerleads.com. But in your world, you should have approximately 20 to 30 warm leads of people who you want to say, I want to follow up with this person consistently. So they're taking all this swarm of information, confusion and overwhelm and doubt, and you're just harnessing that, right? You take the top 3, go over the next step for each one, and then you're also going over the top 20 or 30, and you're moving people in and out of those 20 and 30. Now, here's a doozy. Here's a real doozy, because you also need to get your acquisitions rep to recommit to the business. So salespeople by nature, they are scattered. They're always looking at the next opportunity. If you talk to salespeople, you will find that they work at a car dealership. 1 month they are selling solar. Next month they're selling construction service. The next month they're selling hot dogs on the side of the street and an MLM. And then now they're working for you as an acquisition specialist. And I got to tell you, you want to stop that cycle if you can. Some people are going to be just scattered, and you're never going to be control them, and they're going to go bye-bye anyway. But if you can recommit an acquisition specialist to work this business and listen to your coaching and to focus on the no limit selling system and on their top 3 leads every week and on the top 30 overall, okay, they will be successful if you get them leads. However, if they are focused and saying, we should go to another market, or we should go virtual in all 50 states, okay? And for me, I'm a local guy in terms of if you're working a market, I think that you should work one market. I think that you should have one marketing channel before you move on to the second and hyper focus. And I think that you should focus on one strategy. And if you're like, oh, we should do 20 different strategies in one market, watch, I heard so-and-so on this podcast, and this is what we should do. Forget all that, okay? You are the leader. You've got to refocus. If you listen to this podcast right now, we focus on big, fat, giant wholesale deals. Okay, I know I talk about investing in mobile home parks, but right now for this, I'm talking about real estate wholesaling for single family houses. So you got to recommit them, number 1, to you, number 2, to the training, number 3, to your market, okay, and number 4, getting really, 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 really good at selling or acquiring real estate. That's 4. Or sorry, that was 5. Now this one's gonna sting, but I'm just telling you right now, it's real. A fact of this business is that you will have turnover. It is inevitability. It's inevitable. So if you think that so-and-so, if you're gonna have a rep, they're gonna be with you forever and just gonna be you two, and that's great, you got nothing coming. So I want you to invest in your people, and I want you to love them and take good care of them and pay them well. That's all that. But your acquisition specialists need to know that if they step out or lose lack of focus, that you're going to hire someone right behind them. That's really, really, really important. If you notice in the NFL, they are always doing that, the National Football League. You need to start interviewing now. Never stop interviewing. You need to have an ad out. You need to be meeting with people every single week, because as you're going through the training process and you're like, hey, let's show up on Wednesday or Friday. And if you're noticing they're not taking that seriously, and they're always talking about another industry or another market or another, strategy or another, whole other business idea, then you need to start interviewing. And if they are like doing a side hustle, like forget it. This is not going to work. So start interviewing right now, because if you lose somebody, one of the reasons why we don't let people go is that we're scared of the work of hiring that new person, the ramp up part. So if you kind of start that process, right, number 1, it may get that person on their toes. But number 2 is that if they do leave, right, or decide to quit, or if you have to let them go, you're going to have someone right in the stable. Okay, so I will review these 5, right? I think I did a bonus one for 6. But number 1, remember what you did 90 days ago, okay, is what your results are due to today. And you got to train your acquisition specialist on that. 2, you got to have a sales meeting at least twice a week. 3, you got to go over all your warm leads all your warm leads, you should have 20 or 30. That's not including your top 3, right? Constantly, you're always moving people in and out. You got to recommit your acquisition specialist to number 1, becoming a master of their craft. Number 2, the industry. Number 3, the market, right? And 4, not getting distracted by all the podcasts out there, except for this one, of course. And lastly, got to start interviewing. You got to always be interviewing because you want them to see you interviewing. But also, if somebody does leave and they're not ready to get with the program, okay, then you could get someone to come in and just pick right up where they left off. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Make sure you head on over to nextlevelwholesaling.com. Download the assessment, please. All right, let me know your score. Hit me up on Instagram, say @Todd Toback, and I will talk to you on the next episode.